I've always been a fan of XY, which is why recently I decided to pick up ZA. While I did have a blast with it for about 55 hours and counting already, holy Jesus. The whole time, I had a lingering feeling that this wasn't the sequel to XY that they hyped it up to be. Thankfully, the further I got in the game, the more they took advantage of their previous game's lore, and it led to an incredible finale that I won't talk about for the sake of those who haven't played it yet. Seriously though, if you can, do play it. It's an incredible game, and I had a blast playing it, and I have never wanted to complete the Pokédex more than in that game. And I actually did, and now I speak Pokemon's language, but, still, by the end of the game, there were a few desires I had that were unfulfilled story-wise, I guess is how I'd put it. The story itself is incredible, the returning characters were hardly what I expected, but in the good way, and the new characters are the best that Pokemon's had in generations, but still, I felt like there's more stories in the Kalos region that are waiting to be told. That thought, combined with a few of my original characters being reworked into a Pokemon alternate universe, led me to realize, hey, wait a sec, I can just make a Pokemon fan game and base it off the ZA Royale format. And here we are! My sanity is down the drain already, and it's only day 5 or so. I'm not particularly good at logging what I'm doing, and I only came up with the idea to make this series after my first long session of work, so this will probably not be super in-depth, but I figured I would try to document the beginnings of my series as good as possible anyways. That way future episodes are easier. For starters, I had to work on my tile set. Normally you can use the base Pokemon Essentials tile set, but, I wanted to make mine in the Heart Gold or Black and White style, whatever you consider this. The character sprites are based on Heart Gold and the tiles are Black and White. Call it mishmashed, I don't know, I like it. Here's the thing, right? I should absolutely not have decided to change art style. Don't get me wrong, I love the art style I went with, that's why I chose it, I don't regret a thing. But oh my God, was it such a pain to set up the collision on these stupid pixels.
That fucking that I hate.
The engine that Pokemon Essentials runs in is based on Windows XP, which means that, unlike more recent versions of the engine, the tileset program doesn't allow you to click and drag, which means that you have to click every tile individually. And I'll just save you guys some time. It took me a long time, like multiple hours. It got so bad at one point that I even had to call my boyfriend and just talk while I did it, because I was that bored. And guess what? That was just the trees! I still haven't done the collision for most of the buildings. This is just one tile set. There's a whole indoor section too! Sorry about that. That was a bit of a crash out on my end. Anyways, yeah, I hadn't replaced the main character sprite yet, so it was kind of just this clash of art styles, and I decided to, well, do that, obviously. I wasn't sure how to go about it, and nobody mentioned it in the forums or Essentials Wiki, unless they did and I just missed it. Whoopsies. So I decided to just straight up replace the files for red sprites with Lyra's, just so I could get the general art direction down for now. Was this a preferred method? No, but it was effective, so if you're in game development, why are you watching my video? I hardly know how to code. I continued moving further in on my tile set, dedicating a few hours to it every day, until I eventually got to a point where the map looked decently filled with hitbox testing, honestly. I'm pretty proud of this progress, even if it doesn't look like much. After getting far enough that I was proud of myself with the tile set's progress, I decided to reward myself by making the rival sprites, or at least a beta of them. Not sure if I want to keep it the way that it is right now or not. I found this incredible resource on EV Expo that was just what I needed to have a good base of the characters, so shout out to Coffee Cup and or Poltergeist for this template. You saved this project single-handedly. A lot of you might be familiar with Seria Signora, an original character I made for my old Ace Attorney Athena Sykes concept. Well, the antagonist of this game is, basically the prototype for Seria, but still unique enough to keep her a different character. This is Okano Giovanna, a member of the Mafia. Despite the gang she's affiliated with, she sticks with the Mafia to pursue genuine justice for those who can't stand up for themselves, and more particularly, to take down greedy corporations who have wronged the people. If you've played Pokemon Legends ZA, you might be thinking, hey, isn't that just yes? That's why I believe her being in the Rust Syndicate lines up perfectly for this alternate universe of ZA. I went through a lot of variations for Okano and her design, but I'll try to go through them quickly. This one was alright, but it didn't quite capture who she is as a person, if that makes sense. Not to mention, design-wise, her head is a bit too boring, which is usually why I have the rose on her eye. I added a hat, courtesy of Poltergeist sprites, and that made it slightly better, but it still felt boring to me design-wise. Was that just me being picky? Probably, but I like to be a perfectionist with my work. I think you can definitely tell I wanted to add the rose over her eye, as it's such a major part of not only her design but also her character. The problem is that I'm not particularly good at pixel art, so
Dumbass!
never again. Holy shit. I absolutely butchered this first take on her rose, and I don't even know how to describe it. It's just horrible. As one of my friends said, it looks more like a ruby than a rose. I think the outlines especially emphasizes it as such, so... Okay, better, but still not the look I'm going for. It definitely looks more like her eye's gone, and it's bleeding, aside from the 3 green pixels on the side. Oh, hey, wait a sec, that's easy. Hey! There we go, that looks pretty decent. Still not perfect, but I'm also a perfectionist, so I'm probably just being picky about that. I am very proud of how the final sprite turned out. It's obviously not good, but for what I'm capable of, I'm proud to know that I can at least make a rose. Eventually, I decided that she looked better with the rose and the hat, so I decided to add the hat once more, and now we have the Okano we all know and love. Now that I had an NPC I could use, I decided to test out a plugin I had installed that adds black and white speech bubbles. It worked flawlessly. After I learned how to compile my data, I didn't know how to do that before this, so as you'd imagine, it was just not working. I'm just an idiot though, so eventually I figured it out and oh my god, is this looking awesome or what? Further into development, I discovered a few issues with the tile set, and so I decided to fix those pretty easily using Photoshop to layer certain tiles to hide the player sufficiently. Anyways, after those struggles, I started realizing I'd need sprites for the actual protagonist and got to work. Again, huge shout out to Poltergeist for making these sprites. I cannot thank them enough. Without their hard work, I would not be doing this project right now. I already had a basic concept of who I wanted to be the protagonist, but I wasn't quite sure how to translate her into the Pokemon world. You can tell I had a few ideas already, specifically that I was dead set on using green for her design. This character was originally based on Jamie Page's Cadmium Colors, which is a song that touched me deeply. The chorus lists different cadmium colors, but it never once mentions green, which stood out to me for some reason. So I decided to make it a part of her design. The decision on the beanie or the hat came down to my boyfriend, and he chose the beanie, so you might notice the dark spots under her eyes, and yeah, that's intentional. I don't know a lot about the story right now, but I plan for her to start in a horrible position and for AZ to rescue her and take her into Hotel Z. Much like he did for Urbane or Tawny, I guess. Is it traditional for Pokemon? No, but it's a fan game, so who cares? After that, I mostly just worked on getting acquainted with the battle system, figuring out how to add wild encounters thanks to Thundaga's tutorial series, and then learned how to add trainer battles, once again, thanks to Thundaga's tutorial series. Now here's the thing, right? I really like Elite Battle System as a plugin, like a ton. However, there was one feature I really wanted to match the sense of character ZA has. During a fight, you'll occasionally do something that triggers dialogue mid-battle, and it may seem simple, but it adds so much character. I thought it would be cool to do something similar in this fan game, since it's based on ZA. However, since it was an unofficial port of Elite Battle System for the latest version, there was very little customization, which meant I would have to find another alternative for the battle system, which was a shame to my perfectionist self, but I eventually found a system that was sufficient. It's good, incredible even. The documentation is so user-friendly and I love it, but it's just not as visually appealing to me as the Elite Battle System. That said, I do really like this version of the engine, because it allows for much more customization. Not only does it come with mid-battle dialogue, but you can even customize what triggers it instead of just turns or the number of Pokemon left. For example, this line of dialogue only triggers after you use a super effective move on one of her Pokemon. But yeah, I think I'm very proud of this progress. As I'm writing this, it's just the start of the 6th day or so I'll probably get back to work now. Not sure when I'll get around to editing this. That's gonna be a pain unless I'm lazy. In any case, today I go back to adding collisions. Thank you all for watching, and I hope this was at least a little bit entertaining. If not, feel free to bully me in the comments. Please don't. I'm actually very proud of my work so far, so that would be devastating. But, you know. Anyways, I'll leave you all with a 3-minute short clip of my first Pokemon trainer battle. It's not gonna be canon or anything, but, you know, I just wanted to make a battle to test out the dialogue and stuff for the battles, so, this is what I made.